raising a family can be tough, and they'll say, you know what, at least I'm old and gray and I can't walk, they'll look after me. To me, it was like, yeah, the ultimate vision of family gone wrong.
Was a really big fan of this movie, and I guess my first question for you is: this movie takes a lot of chances, or I guess strays from the formula of Evil Dead a fair amount. When you first got into the project, what were some of the things that you knew had to be an Evil Dead movie, and what were some of the things that you were like, I can change and kind of make it my own?
I think the things that there were absolutes was, it was really in a lot of ways it was about energy. That was the thing that was in my mind: energy and entertainment. The word "make it entertaining" I did on a post-it note, or a version of that stuck beside my laptop when I was working on it, which was to remind me that no matter what, it doesn't become a heavily existential total creep fest, that it is entertaining. I wanted it to be a roller coaster like all those other movies have been in the past. That was the most important thing. I felt if I got that right and then carried enough of the iconography through, maybe did a fresh spin on it, and then blended that with an original story with these new characters, that it could kind of work. But it is that kind of sheer bloody momentum. That was the thing that really, really mattered, and more than anything else. That was my overall goal. And I felt like if I kept on reminding myself of that and leaning into that, from development, writing, prepping the movie, shooting the movie, in post, how we use the music, VFX, all of the elements, all of that, wrapping it up, it was to give spectacle in that way. And yet that was, from that, everything else kind of dripped down.
When you were putting the movie together and editing, were you like, we can cut even more out of this, like we can make it faster? Was it that kind of thing where you were like playing with seconds to try to make the pace as quick as possible?
Yeah, like within reason. We were never trying to make it like overwhelming in a way, because I think movies, like, I think if you work and edit correctly, people go, it needs to be this long, it should be that long. Like, I like a nice, neat 90 to 100 minute horror movie. Like, I think that's a good place. There's no way I don't want to say no way, because I could always be proven wrong, but I don't think because I think this is actually the longest Evil Dead movie, as far as I know. I think it is by a few minutes. Certainly in terms of, if you take titles and credits out, it's definitely, in terms of story and picture, it's the longest. But it wasn't about just make everything faster, because then you end up with something that actually can feel slower, because the pace becomes too consistent. It's just about being honest and trying to reward the great moments as much as you can. In some respect, it's like, how can I put more of this in at times? But the energy kind of comes through. To me, it was more about the consistent change that takes place in the story, that you never get to rest. And then also, how I like to direct is, like, I don't shoot a huge amount of traditional coverage, which makes shooting a movie harder, because I'm constantly wanting to move the camera for the next shot, to find a new perspective and kind of find a new angle. And that actually feeds into the energy of the film also.
One other thing that you did that I really love about this is that you kind of focus it on a family more so than just a group of like teenagers or friends or anything like that, but specifically, and this ties into your earlier movie, The Hole in the Ground, of like kind of the fear of being a young mother and kind of a single mother as well. Why did you think that was something that could be brought onto the Evil Dead, or the Evil Dead could be placed over that kind of framework?
Yeah, I kind of, to me, it's just an instinct in terms of how I work, and it's really hard to unpick how your brain works or why you approach stories like in a specific way. From my point of view, I'm drawn to stories about family, about loved ones, about maybe family in peril. Also, the hard side of maybe being a parent or having kids. I don't have kids. I've got siblings that all have children, and I've seen the highs and lows of families. I was a kid. I've seen the highs and lows of family, and it's something I keep on getting drawn back to. So it wasn't even like I sat there and said, this must be about family. This must be about motherhood. This must be about whether or not to be a mother, or anything along those lines. It just kind of naturally came out as I did the type of thinking that I do. It's like interesting, as I think about other projects that I want to make, I do find those same type of thoughts come back to me over and over again. And I think there's a lot of creative people and a lot of writers that often do write about the same thing on many occasions. But how I felt it could work with Evil Dead was that it could give me a platform to make you understand these people, like these people, believe in them, and then go and terrify you because you've connected with them. And I quite like in horror movies where you meet people and they've already got scars, they've already got cracked, and then the horror can actually expand on those. But what was also important was that you weren't meeting a set of characters, because sometimes this happens. It's a tonal choice. it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes there's horror movies you watch and you feel like the characters already know they're in a horror movie before anything bad has actually ever happened. There's a tone, it's like they're walking with a cloud around them. Whereas this was just a family on a Friday night. I thought that'd be really interesting. It's like, wow. And what happens if then I could find a way to get like the evil force to like knock on your front door? That to me was something that was really, really appealing. And it played back into my own interests and instincts when it comes to storytelling.
The finale of this movie is wonderful. In the entire fight sequence in the parking garage, I was wondering when did you come up with the idea of the amalgam of the family, or all the bodies together? Because that is absolutely something that's not been in an Evil Dead movie before. But I think it plays really well to the thematic. Like the family is kind of scary at the same time.
Yeah, and that's where it came from. Actually, it came from a thematic idea. I knew I wanted to have. It's always like when you're writing something like this, it's like, oh, okay, this is good. How do I top this? How do I do something more? So it was the pursuit of something more. But you're absolutely right, and I'm glad you've touched on it. It for me, like a good monster has some sort of metaphorical value or quality. And to go a little deeper into this, where it kind of came from, I kind of thought about, you've got Beth as a character that's unsure if she wants to be a parent, unsure if she wants to go on the road or maybe stay at home and lay down roots or whatever it might be. And she's come home to remind herself of the positives of family, and then she's also presented with like the negatives, the overbearing nature in a way. Like I always thought with the Marauder, like imagine if that thing hugged you, it would be like all encompassing. Like it would be that's a hardcore hug. But also it was also leaning into that thing, and this is more for me like from a kind of a humorous point of view. And I've got friends that have kids, right? And they'll say, raising a family can be tough. And they'll say, you know what, at least I'm old and gray and I can't walk, they'll look after me. And that actually kind of happens in this movie in a different way, where when Ellie gets shot up and loses limbs and can't function anymore, her kids come along and they lift her up and they go again as this kind of one familial unit. And that was something that just early on, it actually clicked. Like when I was still in kind of treatmenty outlining phase of the film, by the time I actually pushed the button, in terms of crossing the line and writing the first draft of the film, the Marauder, as I call it, was firmly in place at that point in time. To me, it was like, the ultimate vision of family gone wrong. As
somebody making an Evil Dead movie, were you incredibly excited to get to do the evil force moving along the floor shot? And like, what were the kind of challenges of doing that in an apartment building versus outside? Yeah,
it was tricky. We did it in different ways. One of the biggest challenges we actually had was, and it's such a small detail, was shooting the opening force, which turns out to be something else, but also feel like the force, but that could also be something else. That was a weird little one that was kind of hard to figure out. We're like, it is the force, but it isn't the force. And then later on, we just ran multiple different kind of tests in terms of how we did it. But as is often the case when you make a movie, like that was happening with my second unit, and I'm running across to do it. And it's like the horror nerd in me that adores, like when I was 10 years old, when maybe a little older than 10, like early teenage years, I was strapping a camcorder to like a piece of wood and trying to do the force in my back garden in like a little town I grew up in Ireland. And the nerd in me, as I said, adores that moment. But on set, when you're under pressure, you're actually just thinking about, is this good enough? Does it work? Have we got it? Got it. Okay, let's go back and stab someone in the head. That it's just the machine just keeps on turning. When you then pull in the rushes or you see it in a cut, because I particularly love the shot inside the underground parking lot as it kind of starts to move towards the building. And one of the other challenges as well was the momentum and speed visually is often built up by having objects to pass by. So it was kind of trickier outside when the force first erupts kind of outside the building and goes. That's even thinking we can use the rain, we can use litter, let's get some cars close by. But once you got in the parking lot and kind of restricted the view a little bit more, it really felt like it was a full flow kind of, I don't know if you want to call it fifth gear. I guess Americans don't drive stick.
No.
So
drive.
Yeah.
Drive. I don't know.
It's a Tesla. It's ludicrous mode, right? It was in
wonderful. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's my time. Thank you so much. I really appreciate talking to you, and I love the movie. Thanks. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Nice to speak to you.
Have a good one.